Hello, my dear viewers. I'm Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of the personality. Today, I want to talk with you about work. Going to work as if it's a celebration, or going to work as if it's hard labor. What does it all depend on? I've come up with a letter for you, and I think that when I read it, you'll be able to see yourself in it, either now or perhaps in your past. I'll read it now. Hello, dear editors. I'm not interested in my job. It doesn't give me what I want. No fulfillment, no sufficient income. I have to force myself to do everything. I'm sick of it all. It's become unbearable. I just endure it and pretend that I like it. There's no heart in it, no pleasure from my work. It's the same thing every day. It's boring. There's no creativity. I get so incredibly tired. Inside, there's just emptiness. So let's imagine the person who is writing a letter like this. Or think back to a time when you started to feel about your job the way it's described in this letter. And to understand why we periodically experience these feelings, or even quite often, we'll have to take a journey into our past. We need to know our origins, our roots, in order to recognize certain processes from our past. In our infancy, no matter what our parents were like, we are still carefree. Nothing is demanded of us because we can't really do anything yet. It's enough for us just to exist in order to have our needs met. But as we grow up, the world gradually starts to expect more and more from us. And for us to get what we truly want, we have to actually do something about it. And so our activity can be organized into two main types, which I'll describe roughly now. The first is when work allows me to realize my personal potential. It brings me pleasure and I grow through it. I have a decent income. Or work is a place I'm forced to go, where I'm forced to do things just so that later I can do what I want without working. And in these two approaches, we see an adult personality and an adult who still has a primary infantile goal to do nothing. I would like us right now not to think in categories of what's right this way or that. Not to think in categories of this is good and that is probably bad. Try to step out of these stereotypes for a moment in order to get a more complete picture. When thoughts like the ones described in the letter about one's work arise, it means it's the perfect time to engage in self-reflection. I've prepared a diagram for you. Those of you who were at the webinar will know it. It's an analytical square, that's what I've called it. There are 4 circles here, and I'm going to ask you to sketch this out so that during my explanation, you can refer to this diagram. In the bottom corner is I, here is it, here is we, and here is meta, the meta position. Where it says it, that could be he or she, depending on the situation. And we will explore this diagram from the perspective of our activity. When I start to think about my work, I am this entire square. For me, the meta position doesn't exist. I describe everything that's happening only from the I perspective. I can only describe it from there. And in order to understand the problem, if not to solve it, then at least to begin to understand it, we will need to place this situation in our consciousness in a detailed way. So there is I, there is my work, and I have some kind of relationship with my work. That is, I am in this we. We is the relationship with my work. And if I read this letter to you again now, you'll see that what I wrote is perfectly suited not only for describing work, but also, for example, for describing a marriage or some other relationships. Or even in general, this could have been written about life. Life is boring, uninteresting. I'm tired of living this life. I can't express myself creatively. So in fact, a person existing in the space of their own I is, as it were, making a claim against their work. Let's try now to rise to a high level of generalization and imagine that someone was complaining to you like this about their work, because this is in fact a complaint. In other words, this text is written from the perspective of a victim, someone who can't do anything on their own. It's as if they're not an active agent, bringing a certain mood and qualities into the work environment, but a consumer who expects the job to feed them, to give them pleasure from the outside, to provide satisfaction, to spark creativity, and to be interesting. This is the position of a child who is like a prisoner, as if they are in slavery and their passport has been taken away. Well, in principle, that's the kind of relationship a child has with their parents. And here we see the same kind of relationship being formed, but with one's work. This suggests that the personality hasn't exactly failed to mature, but this powerful dominant trait of doing nothing, of I want to have everything without having to do anything, is very strong. And a person who remains in this victim position, waiting to be filled from the outside, will inevitably fantasize a lot. It's always some fantasy about their own genius, about being special, because a person always needs to find their sense of significance. And if they can't find that significance through actual accomplishment, they'll find it by satisfying a fantasy. Meaning, I have some talents, but I haven't fulfilled my potential. I could have been this, I could have been that, and so on. Especially when a person has had some experience of fame or success, but they can't maintain it consistently. So in fact, when I am a child, and I'm putting child in quotes, who is waiting to be filled from the outside, I don't have the option of influencing the space, of changing it. I can make something uninteresting interesting. For example, like me filming videos for you every week, I could turn this into something uninteresting, and you would immediately feel that I have no enthusiasm, no original ideas, and you would then become the tormentors. I could have read this very same letter about YouTube. It's become uninteresting, boring, I'm not getting any satisfaction, and so on and so on. And when a person shifts into a state of victimhood, writing letters like this about their work, about their loved ones, then they are not to blame for anything. They have a presumption of innocence. They are good, they have no complaints about themselves. And all the complaints are directed at someone else. So it's a pretentious attitude and a state of victimhood. It's precisely the failure to understand that you're operating under this master goal from childhood that prevents a person from being happy, because everything has to be done through sheer effort. So the person does nothing, and when they do start to do something, they have to put excessive pressure on themselves to force themselves. It's like, I don't want to do anything, so I have to practically scare myself into it, telling myself I'll end up with no money, I'll die, and so on and so forth. So it's activity through intimidation when the personality is in an anxious race, and then the person's activity isn't fluid and qualitatively improving, but comes in these bursts. I do something, then I do nothing. I do something, then I do nothing. And this sporadic nature doesn't allow for building a business that expands, that grows. I don't mean in quantity, but a business that has prospects for development. And in fact, our personality, being locked in, cannot set suprapersonal goals. When we haven't broken out of our own self-obsession and we continue to live in a world named after me, then I truly don't need anything. I don't have a suprapersonal goal, because I'm warm, I'm fed, and that's it. And many people say that when they had no money, nowhere to live, they had so much enthusiasm, they did this, they did that, as if they were more talented. But then I achieved it, and the goal disappeared. So you see, on the instinct of survival, we started running, and our potential is mobilized. It seems greater. But when it's as if there's nothing left to scare ourselves with, it's as if all that potential which was definitely there just goes away and there's no more energy for activity. And at that moment, the personality needs to go through its existential crisis. When the internal goals are satisfied, a suprapersonal goal must appear. And a person who isn't used to analyzing themselves and who doesn't perceive their emotions as their own, but as a consequence of the world's influence on them, doesn't understand that they're stuck. Meaning the person has grown up and matured, but some aspects of them, such as certain traits or behaviors, haven't changed. And they are constantly being pulled back into goal setting. And if I don't consciously create goal setting as a suprapersonal goal, then I'll inevitably slide back into the goal setting of my past carefree infancy. And then to pull me out of there, I need this coercion and so on. Procrastination, laziness, it all comes from there. In other words, a person who can't see discipline and order as their allies, but sees them as a form of violence against themselves and rebels against it, that person is a prisoner of their own desire to do nothing yet still have everything. And then the only way available to them, as I've already said in this video, is a fantasy about themselves, a fantasy of supposedly having it all. And not only is the person a prisoner of this dominant state, they are also forbidden from getting smarter. That is, the personality actually needs to change in a way that allows it to break out of this fixation, to evolve a bit more, and then it can rely on the world and not just on its own I want. But you can't get smarter either, because if a person gets smarter, it's as if they'll lose that goal of how can I become happy? And a trap behind 7 locks appears, which won't let the person out. Why did I consider it important to make a video about this? Because even if we don't spend most of our time in these states, we still fall into them. And I, in particular, fall into them when I have to do something for work. And I have to talk to myself to bring up from the depths this dominant desire to do nothing and to make demands, to see anything that forces me to act as a tormentor. And by removing this desire to do nothing, I immediately stop seeing my own obligations, the ones I've taken on, as something oppressive and coercive. My own obligations, the ones I've taken on, as something coercive. And then much more enthusiasm appears. That is, I'm not weighed down by being pulled down into laziness. I've brought it into my consciousness, I've understood what it is, and then I need less effort to do something. I'm like a cart that's been unburdened of its stones. So that's our video. I would like to remind you that we appreciate your support. This channel exists thanks to you, our viewers. None of your likes and comments go unnoticed. Our team is delighted to welcome every new subscriber. We especially appreciate your comments, which share your insights. This helps other viewers understand themselves as well. Many of you appreciate that we create a safe space where you are not judged, so don't hesitate to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I would also like to remind you that my first book is available for purchase as an ebook. The link is in the description. This book is an opportunity to explore and study your inner world. It is like self-analysis. In addition, we are translating one of the webinars that I conduct monthly, so you will have more opportunities. So feel free to join us. And under the video, I'll ask you to describe these two states as separate ones. I, a prisoner of the dominant state of infantile inaction, and I, an adult striving for evolution and development. I'll say goodbye for now. Until next time.